Most people live their lives in limited access mode. Your subconscious is literally locked down by old programs of survival, fear, and scarcity. But what if I told you there's a direct access code to your biological computer? The difference between who you are now and who you dream of becoming isn't years of hard work. It's one precise turn of the key in your neural network. Today, I'll give you that key. If you're ready to enter this code, write "I accept the code" in the comments to activate your intention. We're starting right now. The problem isn't that you have negative thinking. That's too superficial a diagnosis. The problem is that your brain is a prediction machine, optimized for survival, not happiness. The limbic system registers a threat in 80 milliseconds, 5 times faster than the cortex can formulate a rational response. Visual, timer, 80 milliseconds versus 400 milliseconds, oscilloscope-style graphics. Every time a negative thought passes through this system, it creates a slightly deeper rut. In neuroscience, this is called long-term potentiation. In everyday life, I always think this way. Dispenza calls it emotional addiction to the past. The brain literally seeks out familiar neurochemical patterns, like a drug, and produces them itself through thoughts. The system is bugged. You don't think negatively because you feel bad. You feel bad because your neural circuits are trained to reproduce this pattern. But what happens when you cut off that flow? What do neural circuits do when they're left without their usual substrate? And why were the first 48 hours of the experiment physically challenging? Imagine the brain like a snow-covered field. Each thought is a skier. The more often it takes the same route, the deeper the rut. Sliding through it is easy. Stepping off it is an effort. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to create new routes. But there's a nuance that most materials ignore. Old ruts don't disappear. They compete with new ones. Visual. MRI scans before and after meditation practices. Data from Sarah Lazar, Harvard, 2005. In 2005, Sarah Lazar of Harvard recorded, in people who practiced mindfulness, the anterior cingulate cortex, the area that controls attention and emotional regulation, was structurally thicker. Not more active, physically thicker. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable neuroplastic adaptation. Dispenza goes further. When you withhold attention from habitual negative associations, you literally starve the neural assemblies that generated these states and force the brain to seek new configurations. Visual, animation, the extinction of one neural network and the growth of a new one. This is called synaptic pruning through input deprivation. Simply put, neurons that don't fire together stop connecting together. The theory is convincing, but here's what I didn't expect. On the 4th day, something happened that I can't explain with neurobiology alone. And that's why this is the most important part of the experiment. Day 1. The system resists. The first 3 hours seem simple. Then, the brain begins to suggest automatic alarm scenarios. I notice them and don't engage. It's not suppression, it's observation without participation. The effort is enormous. By evening, a slight headache, like caffeine withdrawal. Day 2, pattern withdrawal. Irritation, for no reason. The body is tense. Cortisol searches for a trigger and finds none. This is chemical withdrawal. Neural circuits demand a familiar substrate. Day 3, silence within. something shifts. Not euphoria, more like an absence of background noise, as if someone turned down the volume of the brain's default network. Concentration, sharp. Time flows differently. But here's what's important to understand. What I describe as feelings has a precise neurobiological correlate. And before we get to the mechanics of robust adaptation, we need to decipher the role of dopamine loops in maintaining the new pattern, because without this understanding, the effect will disappear by day 8. This is what this experiment changes in the architecture of understanding. You are not a positive or negative person. You are a person with a specific neural configuration that is updated every time you direct attention. Attention is not a metaphor for willpower. It is literally the mechanism of neuroplastic reorganization. Where attention goes, synaptogenic resources go. Dispenza is right, not in a mystical sense. He is right in a mechanistic sense. Thought is a physical act. Repeated often enough, it becomes a structure. 7 days is not the time it takes to transform a behavioral pattern. 7 days is the time sufficient to understand the mechanics of the process from the inside. And this is already irreversible, because knowledge of one's own mechanism is also a neural recording. Most people think about dopamine incorrectly. It's not the pleasure hormone. It's the hormone of anticipation, expectation, search. Venk Pakshagopian of Stanford has shown dopamine is released not when a reward is received, but when the brain predicts its possibility. This fundamentally changes everything. If you create a new neural pattern without dopamine reinforcement, the brain perceives it as a threat. No predictable reward means no motivation to maintain the pattern. The system reverts to the old. This is why most transformations die by the 8th day. Solution? Micro-rewards. Not grandiose goals. Small, immediate, specific completion signals. The brain must learn to predict pleasure from new behavior. I started keeping a diary, not of events, but of moments of awareness. Each entry is a signal to the brain. This pattern leads to something significant. The dopamine loop closes. The system becomes ingrained. But there is one mechanism, which I discovered by accident, and which sped everything up many times over. It is not connected with thinking. It is connected with breathing. The nervous system has 2 modes: sympathetic, fight or flight, parasympathetic, rest and recover. Most people are chronically stuck in the first. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It connects the brainstem to the heart, lungs, and intestines. 80% of its fibers transmit signals from the bottom up, from the body to the brain, not the other way around. This means the state of the body shapes the state of mind, not the other way around. Stephen Porges, the author of the polyvagal theory, showed high vagal tone correlates with emotional flexibility, the speed of recovery from stress, and the capacity for neuroplastic adaptation. Practice. Extended exhalation. Inhale, 4 seconds. Exhale, 8 seconds. This activates the parasympathetic branch and literally opens a window of neuroplasticity. The brain in safety mode is much more easily restructured. I added this practice to the experiment on the 5th day, and it was then that the speed of adaptation increased noticeably. You've been told, visualize the outcome. Imagine yourself having already achieved the goal. Feel it right now. It's a popular idea, and it's partially wrong. Research by Gabrielle Oettingen of New York University has shown people who vividly visualize their desired future without working through obstacles achieve goals less often. The brain perceives a detailed mental image of the outcome as an already accomplished event. Motivational tension decreases. Dopamine is released before the action begins. a different technique is needed. WHOOP. Wish, desire, outcome, result, obstacle, obstacle, plan, action plan. Only when the brain simultaneously keeps in view the desired future and specific obstacles on the way to it, the motivational neural network remains active. The system's tension is maintained. The engine doesn't stall. In the experiment, I stopped visualizing myself transformed. I began visualizing a specific obstacle and my action in response to it. The results changed immediately.
But there is another level to this process that goes beyond individual neurobiology. It concerns the environment, and this is perhaps the most underestimated factor in reprogramming.
In 1992, Italian neuroscientists Rizzolatti and Sinigalia accidentally discovered mirror neurons. They activate not only when you perform an action, but also when you observe someone else performing it. Your brain literally simulates someone else's experience from the inside. This reverses the logic of working on yourself. If you spend most of your time surrounded by people with certain neural patterns, your patterns gradually drift in their direction, effortlessly, without awareness, automatically. The environment is not the background. The environment is the software code that rewrites your neural network in the background.
Nicholas Christakis of Harvard has shown that social patterns, including happiness levels, weight, habits, spread across social networks up to 3 degrees of distance. A friend of a friend of a friend has a statistically significant influence on you. The practical question for the experiment is, who in your environment regularly exhibits the neural patterns you want to have? And how much time do you actually spend around them?
The brain doesn't work linearly. Every 90 to 120 minutes, it goes through a cycle, from high cognitive activity to low. This is the ultradian rhythm. It was described by Nathaniel Kleitman, the discoverer of sleep phases. When the brain enters the drooping phase, you feel distracted, yawn, and have difficulty concentrating. Most people drink coffee, check their phones, and force themselves to work at this point. This is a mistake.
Andrew Huberman of Stanford has shown that it is precisely during the short rest at the end of the ultradian cycle that neural consolidation accelerates. The brain retains what has been learned or experienced. 10-20 minutes of quiet rest without a screen increases the rate of neuroplastic adaptation several-fold. In an experiment, I began tracking my cycles. Instead of pushing through fatigue, I stopped, lied down, did nothing. My work efficiency increased over the course of 7 days, not because I worked more, because I stopped interfering with my brain's ability to take hold. But even with the right rhythms, there is one invisible enemy of neuroplasticity. It operates at night, and 80% of people don't know it's active. The glymphatic system. It was only discovered in 2013. Maiken Nadergaard of Rochester showed during deep sleep, brain cells shrink by 60%. The intercellular space expands, and cerebrospinal fluid literally washes out neural tissue, flushing out toxic proteins, including amyloid plaques, the precursors of Alzheimer's. But that's only half the story.
During the slow-wave sleep phase, NREM, what neuroscientists call synaptic homeostasis occurs. The brain analyzes the day's activity, weakens weak connections, and strengthens those that were consciously activated. Simply put, what you worked on during the day is literally built into the architecture of your neural network at night. Sleep deprivation for one night reduces neuroplasticity the next day by 40%. This is not a metaphor. This is data. In the experiment, I introduced a strict protocol. Darkness in the room, temperature below 19 degrees, no screens 90 minutes before bed. The quality of sleep changed on the second day, and the effects of the practices began to manifest themselves more clearly.
We've covered the physiology. Now the hard part, the cognitive architecture of beliefs. why your deep-seated attitudes are stronger than any practice, and what to do about it. There are conscious beliefs. I want to be successful. I deserve good things. They live in the prefrontal cortex. They are flexible. They are easily changed verbally. And then there are implicit beliefs. I'm not good enough. Success is dangerous. Love is pain. They are formed before the age of 7, encoded in the limbic system, and have no linguistic representation. They operate like an operating system, invisibly. These two levels can directly contradict each other, and then what Robert Dilts called a vertical conflict of values occurs. Consciously, you move toward your goal. Implicitly, you sabotage every step.
Affirmations don't reach this level. They are addressed to the cortex, but you need to work with the limbic system. EMDR therapy, somatic practices, certain forms of meditation, they work precisely because they bypass the verbal level and access bodily emotional memory. In my experiment, I encountered this on the 6th day. Everything was going well until a situation arose that touched on a deeper pattern. Superficial practice didn't work. I had to go deeper.
How exactly to work with implicit beliefs is a separate system, but first we need to understand the mechanism of stress, because it is this that seals beliefs, making them unreadable.
When cortisol is released chronically, it changes the brain's architecture. Not metaphorically, physically. Bruce McEwen of Rockefeller University has shown chronic stress reduces the volume of the hippocampus, the area responsible for forming new memories, and increases the amygdala, the center of threat. Literally, measurably, reversibly, but only if chronic stress is eliminated. This explains the vicious circle. Stress reduces the capacity for neuroplastic adaptation. The inability to adapt generates more stress. The system shuts down.
Key insight. Neuroplasticity requires biological safety. The brain will not waste resources on long-term construction if it believes there may be no tomorrow. Practically, this means before building new patterns, it is necessary to reduce background cortisol levels. Physical exercise, sleep, social support, and reducing information overload are not nice bonuses. They are mandatory conditions for the work of a neural network architect.
We have reached the final block of practice. Integration of everything we have discussed into a system that can be implemented immediately, without gurus, without expensive programs, just neurobiology and consistency. 7 days is proof of possibility. 21 days is the beginning of structural adaptation. 66 days, according to Philippa Lally of UCL, is the median time for habit formation. The protocol is built on 3 levels. Level 1 is the biological foundation. Daily, extended breathing in the morning, 5 minutes, a quiet rest block at the end of each ultradian cycle, strict sleep hygiene. Without this foundation, everything else loses 40 to 60% of its effectiveness.
Level 2 is neural training. Observer practice, noticing automatic reactions without engaging in them. Don't suppress them. Observe. Daily, at least 3 5-minute sessions. Mindfulness journal, marking moments, the pattern was activated. I noticed. I didn't engage. Level 3 is the neural architecture of the environment. Audit of the social environment. Reduction of trigger information flows. Intentional addition of contacts with people whose patterns you want to integrate. Taken together, this is not a character transformation. It is the engineering of conditions under which transformation becomes inevitable.
But there is a question I get most often. Where do I start right now? 1 step, the next 3 minutes. I will answer in the next block. But there is one question I get most often. Where do I start right now? 1 step, the next 3 minutes. I will answer in the next block. Right now, your brain is in one of 2 modes. Reactive, driven by old patterns,
Or reflective, where there is a space of choice between stimulus and response. This space is the architecture of freedom. One step, right now. Take a piece of paper, not a phone, not a laptop, just paper. Write down one pattern you want to change. Not a goal, not a desire, specific automatism. When X happens, I automatically do Y. This is an act of neurological precision. You are translating an unconscious process into conscious observation. The hippocampus begins to create explicit memory, where previously there was only an implicit reflex. This is the first neuroplastic shift.
You don't need to change everything at once. Neuroplasticity works through consistent, persistent, small work. A river doesn't carve a canyon in a day. It flows, constantly. 7 days of experimentation have shown me the most important thing. The brain isn't broken. It works exactly as it was designed. Your job is to become its new programmer. If this video added clarity, please like it. It's a signal to the algorithm that people need this kind of content. Subscribe if you want more. Next video, how to work with implicit beliefs at the body level. See you there.